Gunslinger Girls is a series that is very hard to talk about because it talks about some heavy issues, and it was always kind of hard to tell how I should feel about the series in general. Taking place mostly in Italy, with a lot of Italian word association, you have the welfare agency that takes young girls who have undergone traumatic experiences, who have been lost, forgotten, no longer have a life of their own, and turns them into weapons using cybernetics, genetic modifications, the most questionable things possible. But people wouldn't miss them because, well, they're orphans. Their families have been decimated or died off, killed, what have you, and they're basically presumed dead anyway. And what's more disposable than a forgotten little girl? That is the most depressing thing imaginable. And that's not even the most depressing thing in the series itself. You have these small girls who have only honestly a few years of actual use because their bodies in certain situations deteriorate after what's been done to them. They can't grow, but their bodies still try to grow, and how that interacts with the cybernetics isn't always the best thing possible. Sometimes their memories come back, sometimes they go insane, honestly. Sometimes their minds degrade over time, and sometimes their bodies just break down and then they're just cast aside. They're sent on these extremely dangerous missions to hunt down killers and terrorists. They're essentially assassins. They're paired with usually male operative, kind of acting as their handlers. The male operatives usually have military backgrounds and like. And the relationship between these men and these girls are just, it's sometimes portrayed as something kind, the only little bit of kindness that these girls have ever or may ever receive for the rest of their days, however long that may be. But there's also something just unsettling about it deep below the surface. Now, the series, the manga specifically, had a solid 10-year run, with the initial anime being something fairly interesting and a lot of people kind of gelled with for the most part. But there was a bit of a art shift when it came to the second season, where the colors were made brighter, the girls were given even larger, more expressive eyes to a certain degree, and honestly speaking, the initial art style for the anime did the series the most justice. It doesn't paint what's going on as anything bright, cheerful, kind, sweet. You don't get that impression going into it, which is something I can't say for the second series. The second series almost paints the series as a whole almost like this slice of life. You know, girls are just wielding guns. They're probably toy guns and stuff like that. No, people are dying left, right, and center. And I've always had a hard time with series that just seem to want to tell stories that just don't really have any hope of things getting better for these characters. And that's ultimately my problem with Gunslinger Girl, which might have not been a problem for other people. If you simply watch the anime, then the girls are destined to live out a life constantly endangered, potentially dying at any moment. But if you read the manga, you know how it ends for them, and that there are no happy endings to this story. There was only one way these girls' story ends, and it was inevitable given the nature of this story. It's a hard series to get through, and if you could without feeling any kind of way about it, more power to you. But I had a hard time with it. No one wants to see children in harm's way like this, or at least I don't think you should. And while this series had a lot of appeal to me, a lot of fun characters, and those brief glimpses of happiness that these characters would have from time to time were very endearing. This story is a tragedy, and there's no way around that. But I also feel like it might have been a disservice if it wasn't. This story knew what it was, and it knew how it was going to end. It told you from the very beginning. Gunslinger Girl is not a bad story, but it is a story where a lot of bad things happen. And it really does make you wonder, what terrible things are happening to people we don't even know.